slow play drumbeat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Skovron, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these ADs are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
20 in 34. They are 14 games below 500. Any given night, you have no idea who is going to play for Philadelphia. Embiid has missed so many more games than he has actually played this year.
I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens because for the last 4 years now, I do it every year, and I want to hit myself in the head with a bat.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. All right, welcome in, and a very, very happy Wednesday to you here now. The first Wednesday of March, in fact, the 5th of 2025, as we have conference tournaments in college basketball for a lot of the mid-majors. We also have a full slate of games in the Power 4 conferences here where teams like, Florida will be taking on Alabama in a monster game in Bama. In fact, in total, we've got 31 games on the slate today and a lot of starts for those mid-major tournaments happening. We had a couple on Monday, couple yesterday, kicking off a big slate here tonight. But the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big East, the ACC, and the Atlantic 10, we've got more action here as the regular season final couple of games for these teams taking center stage. And really, a lot of this has to do with jockeying for position for their big conference tournaments where seeding matters in a big, big way. So we've got a lot going on the hardwood here tonight, not just in college basketball, but of course, the NBA in full effect here, coming off a interesting night of games last night, a night in which we saw the New York Knicks not be able to get it done without Karl Anthony Towns, but we did see Jimmy Butler back on the court for the Golden State Warriors, and boy, they don't like to lose when Jimmy is on the court for them. You're welcome, Golden State. Miami knows all about that, but we got a great slate of games getting ready to kick off, top of the hour, in fact, with the Boston Celtics at home. And it doesn't look like they're going to have Jaylen Brown again here tonight. Jason Tatum was listed as questionable too, but it looks like they will not have Jaylen Brown tonight. And listen, even on the Portland side, it looks like we're going to have some doubtful characters playing here tonight. Still don't know if Porzingis is playing or Holiday, but now you throw Jaylen Brown in the mix. Yikes. They are going to have the Blazers, who had a great win against the Philadelphia 76ers the other night, smack dab in a 5-game road trip here out east, and they continue to be just a cash cow when it comes to covering numbers. Again, the other night, Philadelphia laying points against Portland. Portland wins outright. Portland has just been phenomenal when it comes to ATS wins here. In fact, in their last 16 games, they are 13-6 straight up, as well as 16-3 against the number when facing the Eastern Conference. So they love traveling out east. They love when teams out east travel to them in Portland. And Portland is battling here. Could it be that the Portland Trailblazers sneak in to the postseason for the NBA? Do not sleep on this team at all. The Blazers are firmly in the mix for the 10th seed in the Western Conference. So they are playing some meaningful basketball here in the month of March. And by the way, the Celtics, I'll just throw this out there, 12-20 against the number as a favorite of 10 or more points this season. They're also just 7-10 against the number as a home favorite between 6 and 12 points. So this is that price point right now where you take a step back and go, I'm not really sure I want to go that way, Boston. I'm sure you win, but don't know that I'm going to be laying a whole lot of points with you tonight. In fact, I'm seeing it now down to 8.5 with the news that Jaylen Brown is out here tonight. We also have a couple of teams on the second of a back-to-back. Minnesota, nice win last night, taking on the Charlotte Hornets. If they can't beat Charlotte with their eyes closed, then I don't know what to tell you there, Minnesota. But the Milwaukee Bucks had a big fourth quarter last night to go ahead and take down the Atlanta Hawks in what was a track meet for 3 quarters until the Atlanta Hawks, of course, ran out of steam and just couldn't run up and down the court anymore. Milwaukee, though, they are back in the saddle at home, and they welcome in, oh boy, the Dallas Mavericks. Could it go any worse for the poor Dallas Mavericks here? Is there anybody left on the Dallas side to actually play? As we know, Kyrie is gone. We know, of course, KD is gone there, or AD rather. Anthony Davis done for the year. PJ Washington hurt. I mean, you go down this list, and it's like, my goodness. The Dallas Mavericks, it went from bad to worse over the last month here. And the Bucks playing some really good basketball right now, maybe the best of the season. But if you want to talk about red hot, there might not be no team hotter right now than your Detroit Pistons, who are going to be out in L.A. for a little late night degenerate special here tonight, the bailout special, as the Detroit Pistons taking on the L.A. Clippers. And that had to have been the most embarrassing loss that I have seen of a team in a very, very long time. When you had over, close to a 24-point lead at the end of the third, heading into the fourth, and you allowed the Phoenix Suns of all teams to come back and beat you. That is just flat out embarrassing. And just like that, the LA Clippers, a shell of what they have been over the last couple of seasons. Kawhi Leonard, not in tonight here. We know Norman Powell got to come back a couple of games ago for one game, and now he's back on the shelf, so he's not playing. This Clippers team is in a bad way, and I can't think of a worse team right now that they've got to take on after that weak performance last night than the Detroit Pistons, who are going to bring it physically, defensively, and the Clippers just struggle scoring points against good defensive teams. So not great there. I'm fairly certain we will see, let me count, no defense in Memphis tonight as the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies are going to go at it. Got to keep an eye on the injury report in this one, certainly for Memphis, who is in, who is out for them. Jaren Jackson Jr. rolled his ankle last game the other night. Will he go? John Morant, of course, was questionable, but currently I'm still seeing a 252.5 total. And let's face it, they might have that by the third quarter with the way these two teams go up tempo and like to play absolutely zero defense here. So that is a game that I'm going to keep an eye on. It's probably going to be the focus of the game here tonight. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier on the college side, get ready for Maryland, Michigan. Michigan coming off a terrible defeat at home there. And then, of course, Florida, Alabama, two of the top 5 teams in the country. It's going to be a heck of a night on the hardwood here, and we have got you covered. The Wizard, Kenny White, will be by bottom of the hour. We'll have Adam Kaufman coming up next. We'll talk about his Boston Celtics, see what he thinks might be the play in that Celtics game coming up. So we got a lot, and I mean a lot going on here, and we're just getting started as, well, Game Time Decisions on this 5th of March. Can you believe it? 5 days in to March 2025. Come back and join us here on the Grid.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we look to get you updated here on a full slate of games in the association tonight. First game coming up top of the hour. A couple of games, in fact, in that 7 o'clock hour, including a couple of G League teams there in the Utah Jazz and the Washington Wizards. The Miami Heat, in fact, will be taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavaliers against the ropes until about halfway into the fourth quarter yesterday by the Chicago Bulls, but they ended up blowing them out there, but very late. It wasn't until about the last 4 or 5 minutes of that game last night that Cleveland remembered their Cleveland, and they were playing the Bulls and eventually ran away with it there. But tonight they'll get the Miami Heat in the building. Heat coming off of that win against the Washington Wizards, rather easy win there. But they'll have to do it tonight as some of the injuries are starting to roll in, which is pretty important for you to know if you're going to be looking at betting on these teams here. Miami will not have, it appears to be, Tyler Hero tonight. Looks like he has been ruled out here with an illness. So no Tyler Hero, but it does look as if Rozier and company will be available for them, the new look Miami Heat. But it might not make a darn bit of difference here. I know the Cleveland Cavaliers wish they would have ended that game much sooner yesterday and maybe a few less minutes on the legs of those starters for the Cavs, but they were taken right to the end there with the Bulls. So they are going to have to go full complement of guys here tonight. So worth keeping an eye on there in that game. Maybe Cleveland early and maybe Miami late in that one. Also, we're starting to see some of the Boston Celtics injuries and guys that have been ruled out. And my goodness, they have got the red-hot Portland Trailblazers coming in. They're laying 8.5, and get this, we've got no Porzingis. We've got no Holiday. We now don't have any Jason Tatum either, but Jaylen Brown apparently has recovered from the illness in which they were considered him ruled out earlier, but it looks like he is ruled in, but no Jaylen Brown, no Jason Tatum, no Porzingis, and no Holiday for the Celtics, which, as you can see, is why this number has slowly but surely dropped there from the 11 that it opened up at, and now, of course, continues to drop here as word travels that, well, they're going to have a lot of injuries here. And it certainly feels like they've been playing like they've got a lot of injuries lately, too, don't they? It feels like the Celtics, motivation-wise, they came out of the All-Star break. Yeah, they were going scorched earth. You kind of looked like they were going to have a pretty good time here, gearing up for a postseason run. And then over the last week or so, kind of hit the brakes. More and more guys are missing. I don't know if it's truly that they're just trying to pace the Porzingis and the Holidays of the world, since, let's face it, they have not really been healthy for an entire season in a very long time. But they are having to go with patchwork offenses and starting rotations. They've had to do that now for a little while, and they're doing it again here tonight against the Portland Trailblazers, who, once again, if you haven't been following, Portland is absolute money when it comes to ATS. They cover numbers and win games outright, quietly, I might add, under the radar, while they're battling for that final spot, that 10th spot with the Phoenix Suns and the LA Clippers to make the postseason. Wouldn't that be something to see the Portland Trailblazers come in and actually make the postseason? So a lot more as far as the injury front comes. As the information comes in, we'll pass it along. But we are also gearing up here, bottom of this hour, for a little Big Ten basketball. Does it get any better than Maryland getting ready to take on the Michigan Wolverines? And Michigan, boy, oh boy, they just got absolutely smoked, didn't they? You got to wonder whether or not we can actually take Michigan serious here. I at moments against certain teams, Michigan looks like they are world beaters. You would have thought that at home they'd be able to handle business like they've done most of the year, but the better teams that can play defense, seem to have the number here of Michigan. Now, Maryland, much better offensively this year, number 13, taking on that number 17, Big Blue here in Michigan. Does Maryland have enough in the tank to be able to cause all sorts of issues for the Wolverines here. I mean, 11-1 Michigan is in conference games this season decided by 4 points or fewer, which is a big reason why they have 22 wins here. A lot of the games that they have had, my goodness, by the hair on their chin. Now, will that continue? Maryland seems like they are poised to take that next step because they both come in with exactly the same record. The total is the one that seems to have gotten bet up here now, 153.5, and I'm starting to see 155.5, even a 156. So we're expecting points. That doesn't surprise me. I think that's going to be an absolutely fantastic matchup here. I'm looking forward to this one here. Also, Florida and Alabama. What are we going to do with Florida and Bama? Couple of top 10 teams here. Florida in Alabama, I can promise you, is not going to just allow Alabama to have their way. You want to talk about an over. This could very well have all sorts of points happening here because we know defensively Alabama has had better defensive teams in the past, but they like to score 90 to 100 points in order to beat you. The only problem is Florida might be better at scoring points than Alabama is. Oh, yeah, and Florida can play some defense. So I think this is going to be a huge, huge game here. Florida wins this game. I think they can lock up a number 1 seed come tournament time. This is big here, especially in the Southeast Conference tournament. We'll talk more about it. We'll talk to Adam Kaufman when Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whoever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazi? Forget about it.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decision here on the SportsGrid Network as we welcome in our good friend Adam Kaufman here, getting ready for a big night in the association tonight, Adam. And I want to start with your Boston Celtics coming up top of the hour. We talked about the Portland Trail Blazers the other night, in fact, with Scott Wetzel there on In Game Live. And All they do is continue to win games as an underdog and cover numbers as an underdog. The problem with Boston here tonight is I'm looking at this. This is quite the ER list we have going here. No Porzingis, no Holiday. Tatum is now not playing. Brown wasn't playing, but now he is playing because I guess they ran out of guys. Are we comfortable laying this number against a young upstart Portland Trailblazers?
Yeah, Holiday and Porzingis and Tatum, like you said, all out. It looked like there was the potential that, we weren't going to see, never mind Brown, White, Pritchard, like all these guys, like you said, a laundry list of an injury report, a CBS receipt even. Here's what I will tell the people out there, because, if you are watching, you can see I got the Boston skyline behind me. I will be laying the 8. I personally will be laying the 8. I'm stressing that because I think there's a bit of bias in doing so. Frankly, I think the Blazers are the right side. I wouldn't even be shocked, honestly, if Portland goes out and wins this game. I think the Celtics are just, these are the games, these sort of play down to your competition games that they tend to take for granted. They get off to slow starts, or maybe they're around even at the half, and then they take their foot off the gas because they don't really care. It's just a prime sort of letdown spot. I realize the Celtics, they're rested. They didn't play yesterday. They're home, obviously. So none of the typical kind of built-in excuses that we would look for outside of not having 3 of your top 6 players are factors here. But I just think that this is one of those games that Boston probably, if you're betting this thing intellectually versus with my bias, Portland feels like the right side to, again, keep this thing close and potentially even sneak away with an upset win. Celtics can't catch the Cavaliers for the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. I mean, mathematically, sure they can, but realistically, it's not going to happen, nor do they care to. That's not important to them right now. So I just think this, I don't know, screams ripe for disappointment, this game tonight.
I got to ask you about, it was funny last night on In-Game Live. I said, listen, my late night play is going to be Phoenix. I'm going to hold my nose. I'm going to take the points. They're playing the Clippers. Durant was crying, saying we got to, he really sounded like he was going to light a fire in this locker room with this team. And then I watched a 41-19 drubbing in the second quarter by the Clippers, and I turned the game off out. I'm like, all right, I'm done. Never again, Phoenix. I wake up this morning, and somehow Phoenix comes back and wins that game. Yeah. Now the Clippers are home, having to take on another one of these young upstart teams that all they do is win and cover games in the Detroit Pistons. Detroit's laying 4.5. That's a big number for the Pistons on the road. What are you thinking?
Detroit's my favorite play of the night. I got in, granted it's moved a bit. I got in last night during that Clippers game when the line was still 2.5, opened at 1.5, grew to 2.5. I hopped in on the Pistons figuring there was going to be some closing line value on that line. Sure enough, like you said, we're sitting 4.5 right now. I just think there are a multitude of factors, pardon me, at hand here. For one, of course, the Clippers played yesterday, as you outlined, and played late into the night in a game that, they should have won, except your guy Kevin Durant did wake up, had a monster second half, and was able to guide the Suns to that win. But for anyone out there thinking this is where the Clippers answer back, they're going to be pissed off. Well, listen, remember, there is no Norman Powell. Kawhi Leonard's not playing. On the other side, outside of Tobias Harris, you have a healthy, hungry, kind of, motivated Pistons team to show everyone that, for everyone on a national level screaming that what they're doing these last few weeks is fraudulent, they sort of got a chip on their shoulder. I like the Pistons to win this thing going away. I wouldn't be surprised if they win it by double figures.
I love that, Adam. I'm with you, man. I'm going to tell you here because I think it's time for that next generation. I'm tired with the same old guys. Give me Portland, give me the Detroits of the world, right? Give me OKC, give me the young teams here, starting to make a name for themselves. I think there's some opportunity certainly on the board here tonight. All right, Adam, we appreciate it as always, my man. I am sure we're going to get a chance to see you on In-Game Live. In the meantime, Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whoever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. We're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazi? Forget about it.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the two best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we're getting ready here. Big night in college basketball as the big boys there rounding out the regular season. Still jockeying for a position here when it comes to the upcoming conference tournaments next week. And then, of course, we'll have selection Sunday. In the meantime, we've got mid-majors underway with their conference tournaments, the one and dones right now. So a lot to get to here, and nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, I would want to break down these games with other than our good friend, the Wizard, Kenny White, in the house here. And by the way, we want to send a congratulations and a shout out to our man, CT Betts, Chris Thurston, welcoming in his first son to the world there, Kenny. So CT, understandably, usually I would rip him for not being here as we get closer to Selection Sunday, but he's got his son now, so we will give him a pass. But that doesn't give you a pass. We need winners here, my man. They just got underway. Maryland and Michigan, Big Ten. Maryland out in front quick, a 3-2 game, but this was back and forth all day in the market, Ken. This was a strange one. Like, we had the Michigan backers, then the Maryland backers, and it looked like we saw some late Maryland money come in as well. Did you believe that was the right side here?
Yeah, I did, Joe. I had Maryland the favorite. I've had them the higher rated team all year long. I think they have the better roster. Michigan has had the better season. Amazing year that they've had, and that's Dusty May coming in for his first year. Shows, Juwan Howard has no idea how to coach basketball because he had a lot of talent there in Michigan, and Dusty May has really put it together, brought in a couple transfers. But like I said, I really think the size inside with Queen and Reese that Maryland has, I think they're going to dominate on the inside in this game. I've got them rated higher offensively and defensively. So I just think Maryland's a better team, both sides of the court. I made Maryland a 2-point favorite. And you're right. This line has bounced back and forth. I took 2.5 this morning, and then I saw 1.5. And then all of a sudden I look back, it was 2.5 across the board. So the books surely don't want Michigan to win by 2. When Michigan wins, it's usually by 4 or less. So I think we got a pretty good chance to stay in this basketball game and win it.
Well, that's the problem, right? With Michigan, it's amazing to me when you go down the list. I think what is it? 11 games by 4 points or less that they have won here this year. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. And I guess, listen, I'd rather be lucky than good. Maybe they're just a team that knows how to close games out. But boy, oh boy, is that rolling the dice in that one there. But they are underway. 5-2, Maryland out in front there. Another game coming up here that you circled for us, 695, 696, G-Dub taking on Fordham here, coming up top of the hour. I saw this at 3.5, I believe. I still think it's 3.5 here. Not a lot of movement. Fordham 147.5. It looks like the total is getting the love in this one, Kenny.
Yeah, I bet George Washington here for a couple different reasons, Joe. 3 reasons, we'll say. One is I think they're the far better basketball team. I've got them rated 8.5 points better than Fordham. Fordham right now 15th in the conference, 3-13. George Washington, this is the second reason I like them. They're in the 8th spot at 8-9. They can't afford to lose. They could drop out of getting a bye in the conference tournament. They have incentive to play for this game. They also have incentive. They played last year at home at George Washington, and they lost in a triple overtime thriller to Fordham. So they got that revenge factor on their minds. They got the must win on their minds. And we got a Fordham team that really doesn't care. They're just waiting for the conference tournament to get started. So I think GW has all of the incentive here. And again, the most important point, Joe, they are the far better basketball team.
Much better. And that's really ultimately at this time of year, right? That's what matters. If you have to win this time of year, chances are there's a pretty good reason for why you have to win in this particular spot. Another game, I'm starting to see a lot of love here. Some people thought maybe UMass a little underperforming this year, thought we'd get better things from them. Now they got to take on the Bonnies. They did get a little love in the marketplace, it looks like, Kenny. I'm seeing 7.5s, even 8s there from 8.5. But is it the total you think we should be looking at instead here with the Bonnies and UMass?
Yeah, I do, Joe. UMass, the side number I have pretty close to what the number is in the market. The total I like under because this is such a big game. These two teams are tied for 9th in the A-10. Once again, talking about George Washington and Fordham in the A-10. George Washington is in that pack of teams with UMass and St. Bonnie's fighting for that bye. The loser of this game is out. They don't get a bye. If George Washington wins, that's the case. They're out of a bye. So the loser is out with a bye. The winner gets a bye. That's a lot of incentive in this game. So to me, it's a playoff type of game. UMass does have home revenge. They lost earlier, 73-59. That came 132. And when you look at how these two teams play, Frank Martin, remember him from Kansas State. I think he was also a couple other stops. He's a tough guy, and his teams are always tough. Defensively, they usually take time off the clock, but this year they played a little bit different. They played a little more up-tempo, but I'm not worried about that because St. Bonnie's, the home team, will control the pace on offense, and they get back in transition. There will be no fast break points for this UMass team. UMass far better on defense than they are offensively, as well as St. Bonnie's is. So both teams' identity is defense. I'm going under.
Like that look there in a big way, 139. And that's why it would make sense why people are taking the points with that, expecting a bit of a lower scoring game there. Kenny, I got to ask you here, because we're starting to see this time of year, we're starting to see these big spreads, right, with some of the better known teams. Like we just watched Duke. They were laying 20, wasn't even close. They won by 40. Do you tend to shy away from those big favorites this time of year? Home court maybe, senior day. It feels like we're getting more and more this time of year of those ridiculous, if they're a 15-point favorite like Texas Tech tonight, they're a 15, 16-point favorite for a reason. Don't be afraid to play those.
Yeah, Joe, sorry to say I shy away from those all year long. They have been the worst bet I've had in the history of my betting. Over 40 years of sports betting, me betting big underdogs, I've never had any success with them. Me betting big favorites, I've never had any success with them. So I'm a much better handicapper in competitive games. And why is that? Because when you get a 20-point lead, anything can happen. You can run the score up, or you could pull your starters and the other team could come back and get a backdoor cover. So I much prefer a competitive basketball game, Joe.
Yeah, I'm just shocked at how many of these teams that we've seen with these conference realignments and these really bad teams that they ain't taking their foot off the gas anymore like they might have in the years past, Kenny. It's head scratching here, but we're getting a whole lot of blowouts. And I'm wondering if that's the case, too, on the women's side in college hoops. I know you've got a couple of big plays for us there. And one more game, we'll talk about the women's side coming up. But if this Florida-Bama game, Florida wins, they are 1 seed in your power rating?
I hope so. I bet them at 14-1 to win it all. So, yeah, I'm rooting for them. I hope they get to. But I don't know if they will. I think they'll probably end up a 2 seed.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, it opens up, right? Because I don't know how much credence you put in with that Auburn game last night against Texas A&M, because it looked like Auburn could care less whether they won or didn't win that game last night. Good win for A&M, but that opens the door for Florida here tonight. We'll talk more with the Wizard when Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whatever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. We're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Forget about it.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four, because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri, joined by our friend again, the Wizard, Mr. Kenny White, in the house. And we switch from the men's side in college hoops to the women's side. And I had asked you before the break there, Kenny, about your thoughts about these really big favorites this time of year on the men's side. And you had mentioned, I try to stay as far away from those. It's just not a good bet. It's not something that you handicap. But what about the women's side here? How do you approach the big spreads on the women's side?
Well, Joe, I've come to be a big fan of betting women's basketball this year. And the one thing I did find out, I was so glad, I did have a big disparity in my ratings from top to bottom. And we know the NFL is the toughest league in the world to beat because of the parity there. And that's why we all like professional bettors like college football, because there's so many more teams and there's such a big difference from the top to the bottom. I don't think I've ever seen such a difference in women's college basketball. The haves and have-nots are completely separated. And the big thing is, Joe, the runs in the women's game are incredible. I've seen 40-0 runs. I saw one team 30-0 in a quarter, a full quarter, 30-0. And you see this out of these teams, and the better teams go on these runs and they keep going. And as you mentioned before, some of these men's teams, they're not taking their starters out until 2 minutes to go. Most of the women's coaches do not take their starters out till a minute to go. They could be up 40, Connecticut, South Carolina, UCLA, USC. I've seen Notre Dame do it. Up 35 points and a minute to go. Up, we'll call timeout with 50 seconds left. Let's bring in the subs who haven't got a chance to play.
Yep.
It's simply amazing. They run scores up in women's college basketball. So, and I'm mainly on favorites, Joe. I'm normally not a favorite bettor, but in the women's, I have been betting a lot of favorites this year.
Yeah, I love it. That's the kind of edges we're talking about. It's why a lot of guys that I know, Kenny, and you know this, they love women's basketball because the market isn't as big. The edges are there. The numbers aren't great. And your case in point, when you got that many blowouts, and you also have it's tournament time on the women's side, right? You got a couple of games that you liked early that are underway. I know you had mentioned Mississippi State earlier. I'm showing a 32-31 game against Missouri right now at about 2 minutes to go. And Stanford, early lead against Clemson in the ACC tournament. So the tournament time is already here for the women's side.
Yeah, they started yesterday, a couple games. They're like the men have, but the bigger conferences have started in the women's SEC tournament today, ACC. And I did bet Mississippi State. I feel like this is my first time through the women's conference tournaments, but I really feel like the better teams will flex their muscles in these games, and they have so far. I laid 3 with Florida. I have them rated higher, both offensively and defensively. I think they'll control the pace. They love to get up and down. Auburn prefers more of a half-court game because they're not quite as good a basketball team. But Auburn did beat Florida this year. It was at Auburn, though, 74-51. They blew out Florida, one of their worst losses of the year. Auburn's a one-gal team. Yanya Gaston averages 22 a game. Florida has 4 double-digit scorers, led by their center, Rashana Kyle, who's an outstanding player. And then Liv McGill, a freshman, is their point guard, and she's having a great year. She's no longer a freshman. I just think Florida's roster is a far better roster than what Auburn puts on the court.
So how do you have it, Kenny, with women's as far as that? We all know the UConns of the world. I believe Texas, Notre Dame, another one of those up in South Carolina. So what's the hierarchy right now in such a chalky league? Who should we be focusing on?
Well, you mentioned the top teams right there. Maybe USC and UCLA are 2 teams you did mention, but those are the hierarchy of the league right now. I feel like Connecticut, Notre Dame, South Carolina, Texas could all be a pick'em game. Those 4 teams are so closely matched. Texas is number 1 right now, but they are one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country. And if the women's anything like the men's, you're going to need to score when you come up against these really good defenses. So Notre Dame, South Carolina, Connecticut, USC, those teams can score. They got some scorers on their team. So those are the 4 teams I think one of those 4 is going to win it.
Yeah, we saw over the weekend, right? USC, I believe, beat UCLA there in rather easily, too, as well. So once we get the tournament time and get a little bit closer to March Madness there, don't look much further than the, I don't know, 3 seeds. Is that what we're looking at, Kenny, here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Joe. There's no chance. Looking at my ratings, anybody 10th or lower, I'm going to say, yeah, even 8th. I think the top, it's 6 teams. There's 6 teams that got a chance to win the women's, and that's it. College, I would tell you, the men's, there might be 10 teams that could win it.
Yeah, and seeding is going to be interesting, right? With some of these tournaments, again, we mentioned Auburn in the ultimate sandwich spot last night, loses one to A&M, but then they're going to finish this weekend against their rival Alabama. Alabama tonight at home taking on Florida, and you and I, we're both holding future tickets on Florida, but I don't think it's a great matchup for Alabama, especially with Auburn on deck here. Feels like Florida getting 3.5 points and the over. Is there any way this thing goes under?
I wouldn't want to bet that game over. Both those teams love to run, and they're both great offensive teams. I think both teams get into the 90s in this game, Joe. It's going to be a real fun game to watch because I don't think there's a lot at stake for either one of these two teams. They're battling for supremacy, but there's no added pressure. Just go out there and have fun, and we're going to have plenty of possessions. I'd love to have a possession number. I'm sure they're going to get 80 possessions each.
Yep. Oh, you can count on it. Track meet coming, much like the NBA, Kenny. Kenny, we appreciate it. As always, my man, Game Time Decisions will be back after this.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whatever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. We're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look us there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazi? Forget about it.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. We got a little something for everyone here tonight. Plenty of college basketball, the NBA, the NHL, with a great slate of games tonight. Why not check in with our good friends Joe Madden as she walks us through here exactly what might be on the ticket tonight for a little Sports Millions pick'em.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Time to jump into our Sports Millions Pick'ems here on the grid. Now we've got a loaded day out there on the hardwood in college basketball. And Tom, I need a solid one. I went 1-1 yesterday. How did you go?
Nice 2-0 sweep yesterday for the two players. Saunders from BYU, Love from Arizona, both went to their hires. So picked up a win there with the 3x multiplier. Let's turn to today. Maryland versus Michigan State. Michigan's coming off a terrible loss the other day. I think they want to really reel things in, slow this game down. I want to look at the game environment overall, what we have from the standings in terms of the Big Ten, and then get to the players. So both teams top 20 in the nation when it comes to Ken Pom defensive rating. Again, Michigan is coming off this absolutely terrible loss. I think they want to reel things in, slow things down. Right now, Michigan is sitting at 14-4. Their next matchup is against Michigan State, which is a very difficult matchup. Maryland, 12-6 in the Big Ten this is. Next up is Northwestern. So if Maryland would win both games and Michigan obviously were to lose both games, they would be tied in the standings at 14-6, and that comes down to seeding for the Big Ten Conference tournament, and that is massive. So because of all this, Michigan does not want to lose this game. They're coming off this awful loss and want to reel things in, slow the game down, and not let it get out of control. So let's turn to Maryland. Derek Queen, lower than 15.5 points. And then on the Michigan side, Danny Wolf, lower than 13.5 points. Both these players are getting there sometimes, not really consistent when it comes to getting to these marks. But again, the game environment overall and the importance of what we see in terms of the Big Ten standings, I think will slow this game down and turn it into a lower scoring game. And the players just won't have enough opportunities to pile up the points. So Wolf, lower than 13.5. Queen lower than 15.5, a very, very important game to close out the Big Ten regular season. What do you got?
Okay, you're looking at a couple of lowers out there, and I'm looking at some higher. I've got the matchup here between Florida and Alabama, and I do think this is going to be a game where both of these teams are going to battle it out. We're going to see Alabama do what they do best, and that's live or die by those threes out there, and I do think Florida can keep pace. I think this is a game that has every opportunity of going to overtime. So I've got two players, one from each team, for a three-time multiplier out here. First, we're going to look at Mark Sears of Alabama. Now, Mark Sears has been extremely hot for this team, averaging 19.1 points per game. His number today is higher than this. It's coming in at 21.5, but I will take him to the higher. With the chance of overtime here and with how many possessions he's going to have of that ball, I do think he has every opportunity of going higher than the 21.5. He's been so hot as of late. We look at his last 4 games. In those 4 games, he's averaging 27.5 points per game. And I'm looking at this one, the only game that he stayed under the 21.5 and going lower than this number was the one versus Mississippi State. He was able to answer back nicely versus Tennessee in that last game out, going higher than 21.5, hitting 24 points. Mark Sears, I definitely think can go higher than 21.5 points versus Florida. And when we look at Florida, I know there's a couple of ways we can take this. I want to look here at Will Richard. Now, Will Richard coming out has been hot. He's been getting those points on the board, just on fire in those last 2. His point number looks low today at 12.5, considering versus Texas A&M and Georgia, he was able to hit 25 points, 30 points, but I don't want to look at that angle for him. I want to look at his rebounds here. We look at Alabama, and they struggle to get those defensive rebounds. Florida, on the other hand, is so strong at winning that rebound battle, and I do think Will Richards can go higher than 4.5 rebounds in this. He's averaging right on 4.8 rebounds, so 3-time multiplier here. Will Richards higher than 4.5 rebounds for Florida, and Mark Sears higher than 21.5 points for Alabama.
We have some massive, massive conference games to close out the regular season. Should be some great action.
Yeah, it should be. We'll see you guys right back here tomorrow for more Sports Million Pick'ems.
All right, appreciate it as always, Joe and Tom. But don't forget, if Sports Millions Pick'em isn't your thing, you can always check out the Sports Millions Blitz'em.
Enjoy Sports Millions Pick'ems, but hate making the picks yourself? Well, Sports Millions has you covered. Head on over and play Sports Millions Blitz'em right now and let the computer do the work. Go to sportsmillions.com/Blitz'em to be able to win big prizes without having to make a single pick yourself. That's sportsmillions.com/Blitz'em.
I appreciate that. As we get ready, another hour of Game Time Decisions. It is put up or shut up time in college hoops. We'll break them down next here on the grid.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whoever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Forget about it.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the two best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. A very happy Wednesday to you. I'm Joe Raineri, and we are getting ready for a loaded slate in college hoops here tonight as the big Power Four conferences, just a couple of more games remain before they begin their tournaments next week here. We do have some mid-majors underway in their conference tournaments, but a lot of top 25 teams in action here tonight. I welcome in our good friend Colby Dant, ready to break some of these games down here. And let me start first and foremost as they're just getting underway here. Florida taking on Alabama, and I love it with Auburn taking the night off last night and allowing A&M to finally win a game. That was nice of them. All of a sudden now, they've already locked up the 1 seed in the SEC. But, a win here for Florida, and my goodness, that 1 seed in come tournament time is looking really good here, Colby, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And really, when you think about, for me at least, I think they look like a national championship contender. So you want your 1 seeds to me, even more so than some of the other schools, and one of them being the Alabama Crimson Tide. To me, Florida has looked the part all year. And you got to love this spot. I know Bama just went up 2-0, but Alabama with having Auburn on deck. Also, just the styles they play at there. I think, Alabama's not the best defensive team. Florida with multiple shot creators, I think, can exploit that. I'm on the Gators here, and you gotta think if they win this, pencil them in, man. Pencil them in for that 1 seed, providing they don't lose in like the first round of the SEC, tournament or something like that. But as long as they can take care of business a little bit, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I like it here. I like the look, and we can probably get a couple of different numbers in game here. So the fact that we're 2 minutes in and there's only 2 points is kind of laughable right now. Now would be the time to take the over. Jump on the over, folks, is what you need to do. All right, let me ask you another one. Tonight, a couple of games that are already underway, and I've seen these monster favorites over the last week. This time of year, you get these home games, senior day, the top half of the league versus the bottom half of the league. It's not even close. And we saw Duke, we saw North Carolina. We've seen these teams just 30, 40-point wins or nothing. It feels like Texas Tech's going to win by 30 tonight against Colorado at home in senior night. What is Colorado going to do to stop them from not blowing them out of the building? I think the number's light at 18. How crazy is that?
Well, I mean, and even worse if you're a Buffs fan is Julian Hammond's a game time decision. But
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I was confused by this one because part of me is like Texas Tech. Should we expect a letdown spot after the Kansas win at the Fog? But man, Colorado's just so bad this year. Senior night,
yep.
I stayed away from it personally because it's such a big number. But it makes a lot of sense to take Texas Tech here and with it being senior night. That's something I kind of overlooked. I was looking at it more from like, do we consider taking Colorado with the fact they're off the win at the Fog, which is like a big that doesn't happen that often with Texas Tech.
Right.
But I think you make a lot of sense though. The more I think about it.
Yeah, the only time of year I'm looking to lay those kinds of numbers is either early on in the season or this week here, where teams. I think Clemson also taking on BC is an interesting spot here. BC just spent the weekend getting crushed out west. Those East teams come back home, man. That first game is usually an absolute nightmare, and it feels like that's what we're going to get here. Clemson should name their score in this one.
No, this one I'm actually on the other side. I think Chestnut Hill is one of those places where you just don't get excited to play if you're an opposing team.
That's a good point.
Right? Because it's like half empty crowd. It's actually, in a way, it kind of works to Boston College's advantage. I get your point with the travel. It makes a lot of sense there. But BC, for whatever reasons, maybe it's Earl Grant from the state of South Carolina, BC has given Clemson some problems over the years. So I took the points in this one just because I thought sleepy spot if you're Clemson, and to your point on the other side of things, the senior night effect for Boston College. Yep. And they just announced, I think, that their coach is coming back. So I think that less pressure is on them. So I'm taking the points with the Eagles there.
We got, I don't know what to do with Missouri and OU here tonight. I mean, OU has been playing what feels like must-win basketball for the last couple of weeks, and they've actually done a pretty good job here. They've been outclassed a couple of times, but I don't know what the hell that was from Mizzou against Vandy. I have no idea. Now they're going on the road. This feels like a toss-up game here, but Mizzou's got to lay a couple of buckets. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking of going with the Sooners. Look, let's just talk about all these bubble games. Georgia, Florida. Georgia needed that win. They got it. You saw it with Georgia, South Carolina. Georgia needed that win. They got it. You saw it with Texas, Mississippi State. They needed that win. They got it. I mean, first off, Mizzou's been terrible on the road this year. 3-6 on the road. Porter Moser and Oklahoma, are on the outside of the bubble right now, but they're right there. They have games to do this between this and Texas and then the SEC tournament. I know they're 2-8 in their last 10. I'm at least taking the points here. I expect this to be a close game. You look at a lot of the metrics to me. Yes, the offensive rating for Mizzou is through the roof, but on the road, it has not. If you single out on the road, it's not nearly the number that it is at home. And then you look at the other things, more desperate team, the way that Oklahoma can shoot the three, top 100 team in the country. I think that to me is one of the reasons why I like them to cover the points there. Money line, I do think could be a play here, but I will say this. Oklahoma's been in so many close games, and they just find ways to lose. So just take the points in this one. Like I thought about taking the money line because I'm like, they need it more, but man, have they lost a lot of close games this year.
Yeah, no, they have, but they've been very competitive. The effort, being at home in Norman, and they've just a couple of unfortunate breaks there to lose in overtime. I think they come out really focused. In fact, I wouldn't mind looking at them early in the first half in this one here, and maybe Mizzou still a little bit of a letdown here, which is what I'm worried about this Wisconsin game as they travel to take on Minnesota. And you got to hope they don't lose the Michigan State game twice, Colby. That's what you got to hope here, because they've lost 2 of their last 3. They lost to Oregon. They had a cakewalk with Washington between. Then you lose to Michigan State. And didn't just lose. They got absolutely beat up. Now you got to go into Minnesota, not normally an easy place to play. I mean, what gives in this one?
Yeah, it is a rivalry game, but I love Wisconsin in this spot. I mean, they shot so bad from three the other night. I just don't think they will shoot that bad again. And then you add in the other things. To me, Wisconsin's still alive in this. I mean, in this Big Ten race. Obviously, Michigan State's got a big game against Iowa, and then the rematch against Michigan. So in a way, Wisconsin's still in the mix. But to me, Minnesota, they just won on a buzzer beater. I love fading the teams that just won on a buzzer beater. I'm parlaying this with Ole Miss, which I know we'll probably talk about a little bit. But I like Wisconsin laying the points tonight. I think they win by double digits.
I like that one a lot here. We'll talk about that Tennessee Ole Miss. Tennessee a favorite on the road against Chris Beard and Ole Miss. I got another interesting one too coming up that will run by you involving Marquette and UConn. Round 2. That should be interesting. We'll have more as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. Let me bring back in our friend Colby Dancy. He can lay it out for us here tonight. Tennessee, Ole Miss here, Colby. 2.5. Tennessee, a road favorite here. 140.5 as a total. What are you thinking about in this one?
Oh, I just kind of, tipped my hand a little bit on parlaying this with the Wisconsin game. But I also just like, if to me, it's worth just a solo bet on Ole Miss money line plus, I think 120, 125. I love, first off, regardless of team, I love Chris Beard as a dog. I think historically back to Texas Tech or Texas, him as a dog to me is one of the best, like a good edge within the sport. But then you add in the fact that Tennessee just won on a game winner in a game they probably shouldn't have won, to be honest with you. That now they got to go to Oxford. Ole Miss, 5-5 in their last 10. They've let a couple teams off the hook. Go back and see that Auburn game. That technical foul late was key. But I think Ole Miss 12-3 at home, and like just the styles that they play with. I think Ole Miss, to me, top 100 defensive team, much like Tennessee.
Yep.
And at home with that crowd behind them, give me the Rebels to get this thing done. I think they get it done outright.
I love it. I love that. And UConn Marquette, I think you and I are both agreement here. UConn at home, laying a small number here. It feels like they'll figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah, and look, it should be noted that they're not playing at the XL Center. They're playing on campus in stores. That's always huge. But another thing is just the health. Getting Liam McNeely back, they've been a lot better. I know they still lost to St. John's, but still, you look elsewhere. To me, they've kind of got they've gone up a level as in play. They look the part more for that little skid there when they didn't have McNeely. They looked like a kind of a questionable Big East team. I think they've come on late. I think Danny Hurley knows the situation as far as he's highlighted the fact that, hey, we could still win this Big East tournament and get a top 3 to 4 seed. So I like this spot. Also, Marquette's been a disaster really the past couple of weeks. I don't know what's happening there. So give me the Huskies at home laying that number.
I love it. All right, Colby, Dan, always a damn pleasure, brother, to get to hang out with you and talk some college hoops, man. Enjoy the games here. Let's cash a few tickets. And, of course, we'll see you on In-Game Live in the near future. Appreciate that, Colby, as always. All right, we got plenty going on, not only college, but we got NBA action coming your way. And who better to talk NBA with than the one and only Mark Zinno in the house, ready to roll here. And I know, I believe Atlanta's not playing tonight, so you can't pick against and make fun of them. But there are a few other teams that you can absolutely rip here that are on board tonight. And let's start with the late game, work our way back. I've never seen a team be that embarrassed like the Clippers were, losing to Phoenix the way they did yesterday in that fourth quarter. 24-point lead out the window. And now you got to take on Detroit. The problem is everyone and their mom is betting Detroit, which worries me, Zin.
Yeah, especially after a game like that. Look, they're out on the road. They were out on the road for 5 straight games, the Clippers. Now they're back home, right? So, they have a little bit of advantage of being back home, which is always a favorable spot to get a team after a long road trip where they lost 4 of their last 5. Their only win was over the Bulls. So this is a dangerous spot here for the Pistons, who seem to be everybody's favorite darling to bet on this year. But the Clippers as a home dog here feels pretty appetizing given what's gone on. I don't think that they would let themselves fall apart 2 consecutive games the way they did here. But, again, I would also kind of look to the Clippers early here to get a lead. The Pistons have been very good at playing a full 4 quarters and coming back to beat teams. So maybe you take the Clippers early in this one.
Yeah, it's no Kawhi, no Norm Powell. They are just fading really, really quick here. What is the final score going to be of Oklahoma City and Memphis? 253, I think, is the number I'm seeing, 252.5. We're not getting any defense here, it doesn't appear. Chet Holmgren out, by the way. Not that that matters. But what are you thinking about this one here in Memphis?
Well, it goes to show you, I bet an under 254 between the Hawks and the Grizzlies the other night. And it didn't stay under. It took 4, season-high performances from players in that game and 68 points in the paint, the third highest of any NBA team this season by the Hawks to pull that game off. The thing goes over here. My instinct is to play the over regardless, but doesn't 7.5, 8 points feel like a lot for the Grizzlies to be getting at home? I mean, look, we have all the respect in the world for the Thunder, but them blowing teams out night in and night out is really, really tough, particularly on the road when you look at it. But, the Grizzlies defense has been a real problem as of late. 132 to the Hawks, 130 to a San Antonio team without without Wemby. They gave up 151 in overtime to Phoenix, 129 to Cleveland. Like, it's been bad for the Grizzlies defensively. So unless they find some level of defense here, maybe you just take an Oklahoma City team total over and just do it that way, and just they get to 125 and get it over with. Because in reality, if Memphis is continuing to push the pace, it's not like Oklahoma City is going to fold, right? Like, that's kind of the way this whole thing goes. If it goes over, it's because Memphis gets over their team total against a pretty good defense in OKC. I don't know. I would lean towards Oklahoma City's team total here.
Yeah, and again, we don't know who's playing for Memphis because everybody's questionable. John Morant, Desmond Bane, Brandon Clark, Sandy Aldama. I mean, the list goes down here. But I would imagine with this total not dropping, they're anticipating Memphis and everyone showing up in that spot here. Real quick with the games that are underway, Boston laying another ton of points with nobody playing against Portland felt like a trap.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not laying heavy points with the Celtics right now. When we get to the postseason, that'll be a different conversation. But the Celtics don't really care at this point in time what they win by, as long as they get out of there with a W. And so it's hard to lay anything more than 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 in certain spots with Boston.
Yeah, I agree. It's at home, anywhere near double digits, I'm out. Not to mention, all Portland does is cover games. And we'll talk more about Dallas and Milwaukee, Sacramento and Denver with Mark Zinno when Game Time Decisions continues.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whatever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Forget about it.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Mark Zinno here as we are off and running in the NBA here tonight. Couple of good games coming up, Zin. Let's start in Denver, too, as the Nuggets at home taking on the Sacramento Kings. It's been an interesting last couple of weeks here for Denver, and quite honestly, I mean, they lost Sabonis for a couple of weeks, Sacramento, but they had been playing pretty well here. What do we do in Denver for this game tonight?
I mean, look, the last time the Nuggets were at home, they got embarrassed by the Lakers. And this is a team that's very good at home. And so they've been out on the road for 4 straight. You have the Kings, who are now also out on the road, but they've won 4 straight. The last time these two teams met, Denver won by 9 at home, scoring 132. I would look to Denver. I'd lay the points or look to their team total over as well. I don't think Sacramento really has any defense to speak of here unless they're playing bad offensive teams like Dallas, Charlotte, and Utah like they have during this 4-game win streak that they're on. So, and if I get under 7 with Denver at home, especially against a bad team or an average team, I think they come out scoring tonight. I think they should be good to cover this number.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think they'll maybe especially keep an eye on that first half, second half. Denver sometimes starts a little slow, but then comes out in the second half and bulldozes you there. How about Dallas and Milwaukee? Milwaukee in that was far too close, far too long there for the Bucks last night. A big fourth quarter. Eventually, Atlanta ran out of steam. Shocker there. But now the Bucks got to travel home and take on Dallas, who nobody's giving a shot to. But that, I mean, really? Are we trusting Milwaukee?
No, it's an overreaction line. You can't play it right now. This current iteration of Dallas without Kyrie now and obviously without Luka, who knows what they are. Obviously, they don't have AD at this point in time either, but this is just way too much of an overreaction line, in my opinion. It's a complete stay away. Sure, Milwaukee could go out and boat race Dallas, and nobody would be surprised, but I'm not willing to lay an 11.5 with a team like Milwaukee, whose defense really isn't all that impressive. I mean, it's been getting better, but, certainly, again, this is a spot here where the price is way too high for me to pay with Milwaukee.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a bit risky here. The Cavs also were laying 13.5 against Miami, and they were taken to the wire with Chicago last night. So they're on the second of a back-to-back here. Miami had a game against Washington that they handled easily a couple of nights ago. Do we take the 13.5 with Miami? I think it's 18-15 right now with about 5 minutes to go.
I mean, here's the problem is that, naturally, I would want to take the points of Miami, but offensively, they've had some stinkers as of late, right? It's just their offense seems to just really be stagnant in certain games, and that's the hard part about betting on Miami is that you're asking their offense to do things that, frankly, that they're not really all that great at doing. I mean, they scored only 106 against the Wizards in their last game against a terrible defense. The Knicks defense isn't great either. They only score 112. Sure, they put up 125 against the Pacers and 131 against the Hawks, but, the night before that, they only scored 86. So, you just don't know what level of offense is going to show up Miami. It makes them very, very hard to bet. You can bet them against lesser teams, I think, but when you're playing a good team like Cleveland, it's just really hard for me to buy on them.
And listen, it's a game of runs. Miami at some point is going to run. No Tyler Hero, by the way, for Miami. So their leading scorer and 3-point shooter is not in this game for him. But at some point, you're going to be able to get Cleveland at a better price in games. So just be patient. It's coming there. You'll be able to do it on the second of a back-to-back in this one here. And also, I didn't understand the number with Charlotte, Minnesota. Minnesota, yes, on the second of a back-to-back, but you got to be kidding me here. It's got to be blowout city here with the Timberwolves, no?
I would think so. They're out to an early lead here, a 10-point lead in the first quarter, so they probably can pour it on, and obviously the Hornets don't have the defense to keep up here. It's just a question of Minnesota's pace and how much will it slow towards the end here. But if you're getting a decent number on their team total, that's something under 120 at this point in time, which is the pace that they're heading towards, might be worth a look live.
Yeah, I'm with you, too. I'm going to keep an eye on that one. Portland, by the way, out to a early lead on Boston. Stop me if you've heard that. Again, no Porzingis, no Tatum, no Holiday. Jaylen Brown is playing, but I don't get it at all there. Zin, always a pleasure, man. You got tickets to cash here tonight. Plenty on the hardwood. We'll, of course, see you again while Game Time Decisions continues next on the grid.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whoever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. We're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Forget about it.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the two best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we've got plenty going on the hardwood here tonight and this week with March Madness just around the corner. Let's not forget we've got a few other things going on in the world of sports, including how about the PGA Tour in full Florida swing mode as Bay Hill is on the sites in Orlando. The Arnold Palmer Classic coming up beginning on Thursday. Who better? And get some winners from than our good friend Brady Cannon here. And Brady, this is going to be, unfortunately, much different than what we just saw at PGA National, in which 19 under won that tournament there, the Cognizant Classic, which is a little disheartening given the fact that that used to be one of the top 5 hardest courses on the tour, and then I don't know what that was, but I promise you Bay Hill is going to play a lot tougher. The field is a lot, shall we say, going to be a lot tougher than Joey John Highsmith or whoever the hell that was that just won it. But what are we expecting here from the Arnold Palmer this week?
Well, I tell you, the odds makers are expecting it to be a lot more difficult as well. The number last week they set was 15.5, and that wind never really kicked up too much. I was getting a lot of reports from you there on the sidelines there, giving me the updates from Palm Beach Gardens. I guess it did kick up a little bit on Sunday, but still, that's the highest or lowest score we've seen in a while. 14 under with Chris Kirk, 17 under last year with Austin Eckroat, and now 19 under with Joe Highsmith. The number the odds makers are setting out here in Las Vegas this week for a winning score is 10.5, under or over 10.5. And, you know, it looks like the weather's gotten a little bit more favorable. I know there was some rain in the Orlando area today. I think we'll get a little bit of a softer golf course, could have some more rain on Sunday morning. Supposed to be pretty darn breezy out there tomorrow when they tee it up. And it doesn't look like any sort of draw bias. Looks like it's going to be windy all day long on Thursday and pretty darn calm all day long on Friday. I think Saturday will be nice, and then the weather kicks in again a little bit on Sunday. So It looks like 2 out of the 4 days you're going to get wind. Should be a little bit of everything, possibly precipitation. We will have some rough this week, Joe. I know, that was kind of disappointing for yourself and a lot of even the players that expected and enjoyed a tougher test there at PGA National. Apparently, we have at least 3.5-inch rough this week, and they're saying that they've grown it out more so than they have in years past. You've got big, firm, and fast greens. This is one of the hardest courses to hit on tour, hardest to hit greens in regulation. And I think that's because they're firm and fast. They'll kick a lot of balls off of the green. And because a lot of times these guys are hitting out of the rough, which makes it extra difficult to hit these greens in regulation. So, yeah, all the stars are here. Xander Schauffele's back, and you've got a winning score projected at 10.5 under par. It ought to be a beauty.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, maybe the toughest 2 closing holes on tour there, Brady, with 17 being the 220-yard par 3, and then that green on the 18th is hilarious at Bay Hill. So it is going to be a real test. But I'm still not betting Scotty Scheffler at this point. Like, I'm still not doing it. I can't at this point. So there's got to be a few other names that we should be looking at here, no?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I there are times when I'll bet Scotty at 4 or 5 or 6 to 1, but here you're looking at, barely better than 3 to 1. It's just too short for my liking. We've only seen him a couple of times this year. I know he's won twice at this golf course before, but I still don't think the price is fair. He could certainly go on to win it, but I'm not going, if it was 6 to 1, maybe I'd try. I think it's more attractive to try Rory at maybe 8 to 1 or even better than 8 to 1. I think you can find in certain shops out there. He's in just as good a form, but I didn't go to either of those guys. I went a little further down to Justin Thomas, who has been playing great golf. He's got 3 top 10 finishes already this season, coming off of 2 in a row, one of which was at Phoenix a couple weeks ago, which I think is a very connected course here. Scotty Scheffler's won twice at both Phoenix and Bay Hill. You see a lot of crossover success between the 2 courses, and they really both stress on ball striking. And that's what you have to have here. You have to have distance off the tee. You have to have accuracy with the irons. It's all about getting to the green. And then if you can hole a few putts, you ought to have a great week. But so much of this is going to be, off the tee and on in with the irons and the ball striking. And that's where I kind of went. We know Justin Thomas, one of the best iron players in the world. And then I went with a guy that's been red hot as of late, Joe, Maverick McNeely. Also has 3 top 10 finishes this year and also comes in off of 2 straight. The last one, a runner-up when he got clipped there at the end at Torrey Pines by Ludwig Oberg. And, I think McNeely being able to put himself in that position against a signature status field at a big boy golf course like Torrey Pines says he can get it done here at Bay Hill as well. And I also think, the way that ended for him, to be the hard luck loser, he's had a couple weeks to kind of chew on it. I think he's ready to go out and attack again. And I could see this guy not only winning this week, but maybe multiple times this season.
I mean, it's unbelievable how the sky is the limit with him. Make no mistake about it. When it comes to Aberg and what he can do here, boy, this would be a great win. But, you got the Rorys of the world here as well. Rory, much better form than what Scotty is in. We've already seen Rory right in the winner's circle. So it feels like if I'm going to lay a small number, Rory's probably the guy I would rather go with, no?
No doubt about it. I feel the exact same way. But they were both just a little too short for me. And, I skipped. It was really hard for me, actually, this week, Joe, to come up with 4 or 5 guys. I wanted to get to 5 guys. I only came up with 4 in the outright market. Thomas made a lot of sense for me. McNeely made a lot of sense for me. And then I started looking, and I'm looking at, Michael Kim, who's been playing really well as of late. But this is a step up in class. This is like a stakes race, for horses. Is Michael Kim going to be able to compete against this level of a field? Joe Highsmith, Sam Stevens, J.J. Spahn, who we were on last week, who finished second. A lot of those guys pop in the stats, but this is a whole new ball game. That field last week was much different than the field we have this week. So I ended up landing on Minwoo Lee at 75 to 1, who is an absolute bomber of the golf ball. The second longest driver in this field. The Australians typically play very well here at Bay Hill. They're good wind players. We've seen Jason Day and Mark Leishman win here in back-to-back years before. Also, Minwoo just played well in Phoenix a few weeks ago, finished 12th there. I think he'll be able to negotiate the wind, and that length off the tee I think will be a huge advantage for him. And then the one guy, Joe, nearly triple digits. I got him at 95 to 1. And he hasn't been in great form for a little while, maybe a year and a half. He hasn't been awful, but he's played very. I know it. You know who I'm going with. And it's not Victor Hovland. It's not Victor Hovland.
All right, who you got then? If it ain't Hovland, who is it?
I'm going Matt Fitzpatrick. Now, Fitzpatrick has finished 14th and 10th at Phoenix. He's finished 14th and 9th at Bay Hill. He's done incredibly well at all of my correlated courses. He's a major champion. You know, a 3 years ago, this guy was red hot, and he makes all the sense in the world. The only thing he doesn't have is he lacks a little bit of current form. But, you know, getting a guy like that at nearly 100 to 1, I said, okay, I'll take a shot with Fitzpatrick.
I love it. I'll throw two other names at you, and I just saw them up close and personal. If it wasn't for a so-so Thursday, Shane Lowry, we might be having a different conversation last week. It feels like a tougher golf course, more suited for his game and the way he can scramble and get up and down here. What are you thinking of Shane Lowry?
Well, he plays tough golf courses very, very well. I'm just worried about the step up in class for him as well. I know he's a world-class player, but I'm not on him this week.
Good point there, Brett.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whatever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazi? Just forget about it.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the two best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. We got some great games underway right now. College basketball, top 10 teams right now. Florida, number 5, taking on number 7, Alabama. 36-35 right now. Florida with a 1-point lead there in Bama. Boy, that's going to be this is going to be a fun one. It's a game that you probably want to turn on at some point here tonight. And you might as well turn on top of the hour in-game live because my man Scotty Wetzel will be passing the baton to him coming up top of the hour. He'll have you covered with the entire slate here tonight, Scotty. But this is a game that should be an awful lot of fun, I think, throughout. I still think I love Florida to win it all this year. I think they have the right mix like they did years ago with Billy Donovan. I don't trust Alabama. Plus, they have Auburn on Saturday. Wouldn't shock me if Florida wins this game outright on the road. What were you leaning towards in this one?
Yeah, I got to tell you, Joe, I kind of like the road SEC teams tonight in general.
Yeah.
You look down at all the games, there's a bunch of games going on, and I do think the better teams are on the road, and I think at this point of the season, the better teams win. I did side with the under in the game. It was about 178.5. Florida's a monster under team. Alabama, stats-wise, is not really as far as their over-under. They're only 15 and 14 over, but we all know they want to put 190 points on the board. But I just figured 178.5 points. That's a lot of points for a team that is not necessarily going to want to run and gun up and down the court. So it's looking pretty good. I got 38-36 with a minute and a half left, so that under looks halfway decent. That's where I went with that game.
Yeah, no, I like that, Scotty. And, we're getting about a minute and a half to go in that one. Yeah, we got a couple of other great SEC matchups coming up. And it still feels weird with saying Oklahoma in the SEC, but they're taking on Mizzou. Mizzou with a just absolute throw-up job against Vandy. Oklahoma has been playing do-or-die basketball for about a month now. They've come up just a little bit short in these close games. They're getting 4.5 in this one, Scotty. What are you looking at here? Side, total?
Yeah, it's another one where if you had to go aside, I would go Missouri. And you're right, Joe. I watched the end of that Vandy game. Oh, man. You talk about throwing a game away, right? We're going to go over in the game. And if you really wanted to isolate it, I would go over team total. But we'll just, for this purpose, we'll go over 162.5. Here's why. Missouri has scored 80 or more points in 9 of their last 10 games, Joe. So they're good for 80. Oklahoma's given up 80 points in 8 of their last 9 games. So add that to Missouri's prowess, and I got to figure Missouri's going to put 90 on the board. If that's the case, this will go over. Oklahoma at home should play a little bit better. 3 of the last 4 Oklahoma games have hit 163 points or more. So I really do like the over 162.5.
Yeah, I don't mind that one at all there, Scotty. What about Ole Miss at home catching points against Tennessee? It was 2.5. I'm seeing 2s now. So Ole Miss getting a little bit of love in the marketplace.
Yeah, not with my money. It's not. Another one of the road SEC teams that I really like. I don't get it. You know what? Tennessee's just the better team. I know Mississippi is ranked and all that, but in reality, they shouldn't. They're going to be a classic SEC team that's going to get in because they have a couple, and I mean just a couple of wins, Joe, against ranked teams. There is a clear divide. They could beat the South Carolinas and the Texas of the world, but when they play the big boys, they lose. 2-8 against teams that are ranked this season. They're only 5-7 their last 12 overall. They're not playing good basketball. 0-5 against the spread their last 5 games against winning teams, so they're not even being competitive. You want to give me Tennessee lane 2.5? I'll take that.
Yep, I don't blame you at all with that one. How about UConn Marquette coming up top of the hour? Battle of the Big East. UConn, I believe, beat Marquette in Marquette. Now Marquette trying to turn the tables. Can they get it done here tonight?
I think they do. Tough to beat a good team twice, right? And it's almost a anti-UConn play, but it is a pro-Marquette play as well. I mean, they're obviously really, really good, right? Yeah. And knowing that they lost 2 weeks ago at home helps the cause. UConn only 8-6 their last 14 games. How about this one for you? 0-8. You may want to say, yeah, but they're at home, Scott. 0-8 their last 8 home games against the spread. They just don't perform at home like they used to, or at least not according to the boys in Vegas. Those numbers generally inflated, not quite here, but them winning at UConn 2 weeks, or at the Marquette 2 weeks ago, I think Marquette returns the favor. I think they win outright, but I'll grab the 3.5 points.
All right, grabbing the points in that one. And then also Cal taking on Louisville here tonight. Louisville laying, I don't know, 14 and a half points, something along those lines there. But it's another total you're looking at in that one.
Yeah, let's go under. It's a big number, 153.5. Both are actually strong under teams, at least Louisville anyway, 19-10 under. They're the home team. They're the better team. I think they'll dictate play. Cal, basically even 15-14. But this has got like 80-55, 80-65. Even 80-73 is still going under. I mean, you need Louisville to hit 90 points. I don't think they're going to do that. Cal 6-1 under their last 7 as a road underdog, as they are here. Yeah, that's a big number, 153.5. Let's go under on that one.
All right, Scotty, flip me over to the NBA. Run it down to me. What are you looking for on your card here tonight?
All right, we're going to go Denver. I know it's got sucker written all over it, but give me the Nuggets laying 5.5 against Sacramento. Denver 10-2 straight up at home, their last 12 home games. So let's go with the Nuggets. Going to take OKC, Joe. They're laying 9.5 at Memphis. OKC's a covering machine. Memphis, they have just flipped the switch, 2-6 straight up. 0-7-1 against the spread their last 8, so I don't think they even get the cover tonight. And then we're going to go against all trends, which all say Detroit Pistons, but I just got a funny feeling the Clippers come to play tonight. You're getting 4.5 at home against the Pistons, who have been great. I get that. Clippers have not, but every once in a while you got to go against the grain. I'm going to do that with the Clippers tonight, getting 4.5. I think they win outright.
No, Scotty, I'm with you, man. It's just far too many people are running to the window to bet Detroit here tonight. Yeah. The good news is we'll see you here top of the hour for In-Game Live. We'll close it out. Game Time Decisions next on the grid.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whoever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Forget about it.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you spending time with us here tonight as we look to get you ready for In-Game Live. That is coming up here, top of the hour. Scotty Wetzel, Mark Zinno will have you covered with all the games going on right now, we've got some good ones here, including in the NBA right now. The Cavs, 47-39 over the Miami Heat with about 7.5 minutes to go in the second. We still got about 3.5 minutes to go, and the Hornets have already scored 50 points. Who saw that coming in the first half? The problem is the Timberwolves have scored almost 60 right now, a little bit closer than some might have thought in that game there. Also, the Celtics trailing the Trailblazers. Shocker, 43-41, 6 minutes ago in the first half on that one. And also the Jazz trail the Wizards 49-45. Coming up, we have the Mavericks and the Bucks at 8 o'clock. Then the Kings Nuggets, Thunder Grizzlies, and the late night game will be Pistons taking on the Clippers, who had a epic, and I mean epic, meltdown last night in the fourth quarter and ended up losing to the lowly Phoenix Suns. Now, we got great basketball happening right now on the college slate, including Michigan not going away. 51-46. Michigan still trails Maryland, but got about 8 minutes to go, 8.5 minutes to go in there. Anything can happen here. Michigan's been trailing this entire game, but they have now cut the deficit to just a couple of buckets. By the way, Florida, big shot at the buzzer there. They take the lead into the break, 41-40 over number 7, Alabama there. Shocker. Tell me you're shocked that we've already got over 80 points in the half in that game there. In a rock fight, Cincinnati on top of K-State, 25-22. Big second half coming up in that one. And Oklahoma State on top of UCF on the road, 40-35 right now. Oklahoma State was a sizable underdog in that one. Will UCF make a nice comeback here? Also, the Bonnies down at the break against UMass, 39-38. UMass with a 1-point lead. St. Bonaventure at home, really good at home, but they got their work cut out for them coming up in the second half. A lot of scoring in that one there, 39-38. Xavier has a 44-40 lead over Butler. Xavier looking to get it done, but never an easy place to play there at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Xavier closed a 3-point road favorite. They got a 4-point lead in that one right now. Coming up, number 9, Texas Tech. I told you earlier I'll be laying the 18.5 points against Colorado. Senior night there in Lubbock. I think it's got bloodbath written all over it. And then, of course, Marquette and UConn. Can UConn in stores hold serve and sweep Marquette this year? Number 20, Marquette. I don't know that I'd stick a fork in UConn just yet. That game is coming up at 8:30 Eastern time, along with Wisconsin. Do they bounce back after a drubbing by Michigan State? Now they got to go on the road, take on Minnesota. Definite rivalry game, although Minnesota has now lost 4 in a row at home and has been outscored by an average of 11.5 points in those losses. But it's still a rivalry game there. Anything is possible. Can Wisconsin, who still won't have their number 1 guard there, Kismet, in that lineup, he is still hurt. They didn't have him for Michigan State, and you saw the offense struggle. Will it struggle again tonight against Minnesota? That's the only thing that would have me worried. Then, of course, Tennessee, Ole Miss. That's coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. So once again, we got a little something for everybody here tonight, including some great NBA action, plenty of college hoops, and some dramatic finishes. Looks like it's getting set up here in college basketball with Michigan battling down 5 now against Minnesota. Can they get it done? Well, we're about to find out here. The final 8 minutes is coming up, and so is in Game Live. Scotty Wetzel, Mark Zinno will pass the baton. Enjoy the night. Pass those tickets. We'll see you at Game Time Decisions again tomorrow on the Grid.